will just reiterate. So basically the difference between an equation or an expression and an equation is something like this. So this guy is an expression. Notice that there is no equal sign. That's the defining characteristic of an equation. An equation has an equal sign and something and another expression on the other side of it. Right, so that guy's an equation because there's an equal sign, and each of these things are expressions individually because there's no equal sign. It's very, very similar to a sentence. So John went to the store. There is a sentence. It has a verb, and there's an actor and an action, right? And so this is, you got your subject and your predicate, basically. These things are like expressions, and the verb is like the equal sign. In fact, the most common word that is used to represent an equal sign is the word is, which is a verb. So for instance, is playing video games. It's not necessarily obvious, but the verb here is, or if you prefer, is playing, right? Is the verb phrase. But you've basically got a phrase afterwards, playing video games, and a person, a subject here before the verb. And this is very, very similar to equations. Equations are generally divided up into two pieces separated by the equal sign. And the equal sign is generally the word is in a word problem. But yeah, so that's the number one thing about expressions versus equations. Now, there's also inequalities. So inequalities tell you that two things are not equal to each other, or not necessarily equal, I should say. So if you have something like x is less than 5, right? This is saying that I want all the numbers that are smaller than 5. So this is one kind of unequal, right? Smaller than is one kind of unequal. And if I wanted to represent this on a number line, right? So here's my number line. Here's 0, and you can put it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to put them all there. I would want to include, I want to not include 5, but I want to include all the stuff that's less than 5, right? So you can shade over to the left. I usually just draw an arrow, but you can shade this in if you like as well. So this tells me this is like a picture of all the solutions to this inequality, right? And then there's other inequalities as well. This is less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. And then there's another inequality that we're actually not going to use very much, not equal to. That's both greater than or less than. So we won't use this guy all that often. We use these other ones plenty. So for instance, I've had a lot of people or a lot of students ask, I mean, these, like, this is almost the same as this, right? And yeah, it is. But let me put it to you this way. You can only vote if you are at least 18. Versus, you can only vote, that's a terrible you, but whatever. If you are over 18. Those things are quite different for some people, right? There's a very small contingent of people to whom that is a huge difference, of whom I am one. My birthday is November 5th, which is sometimes election day. And that means that when I turned 18, which wasn't an election year, unfortunately, I was born in 1977, so that was what was it, 95? Yeah, not an election year that year, but still. No, wait, is that true? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sorry. So it didn't turn out to matter. But if someone turned 18 on election day, they wouldn't be able to vote in this case, and they would in that case, right? So these things are there's an important difference sometimes, right? If your age is greater than 18, you could vote, versus if your age is greater than or equal to 18, then you can vote. And this is the one that makes more sense, right? You don't have to be over 18 on election day. You have to be at least 18. So sometimes the difference between these is important, even though it's relatively small, right? Like this allows for equality, or this allows for equality, and this one does not. So that's inequalities. So we'll learn how to write these from word problems, but in general, is less than, is more than, x is less than 5. Could write x is more than 5 as well. X is no more than 5. X is at least 5. Right, so no more than, or at most, this is at least. This one doesn't come up that much in algebra. We'll see it. I'm trying to remember if you get to statistics, you'll end up using this one a ton, but in this class, not so much. So the thing to remember there is a phrase is an expression. A sentence is an equation. The equation, like this, the equals, almost always is represented by is in word problems. Sometimes they actually use the word equals, but not very often. They sound very stilted when they do. You can solve an equation. You cannot solve an expression. There is no way to solve this, right? Depending on what 5 or on what x is, this has different values, but there's no solution to it because it's not asking a question, right? This is asking a question of, like, depending on what x is, are these things equal, right? If x is 3, are these equal? No. If x is 5, are these equal? No. Well, we could of course solve it, right? -6, I think, is the thing we're looking for here. Yeah, so you can solve an equation. You can solve an, oh, that's not the right button. You can solve an inequality, right? The solutions are a little bit different. Equations have either 1 or 0 solutions, or sometimes infinity. We'll talk about that when we get there. They have a very limited selection of solutions, whereas inequalities can have many solutions, and in fact, usually have an infinite number, right? There are an infinite numbers, or infinite number of x's that make this thing true. So that we'll talk about that more in the future. I just want to go ahead and end the video here because there's not a whole lot to say. If you want more review of this, go check my last video about writing equations and writing equations and expressions, where I kind of talked about it quite a bit there already. So I'll go ahead and just leave it there. Yeah, stop sharing. All right. So yeah, I think that's really all I wanted to say. So I'll go ahead and leave it there and see you guys in the next video.